Okay, welcome everyone. We will call to order our regular meeting of council, and we'll just start by acknowledging and appreciating that we are holding our meeting today on the unceded traditional territories of the Shuswap and Huipachesset First Nations. We do have an agenda in front of us. Are there any late items to be added by councillors? Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, could we add the Key to Key project in? I have a couple of questions from the public that I would like to ask. Thank you.
Absolutely, we'll add that under new business, so item L5. Any other items? Councillor Dame.
Yeah, thank you. Could we also add an update on the Sun Controller as well?
Absolutely, so we will add that as L6.
Thank you.
Any other items from councillors? Okay, seeing none, any items to add from staff?
No late items, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Approval of our agenda with the additions. Moved by Councillor Patola, seconded by Councillor Mealy. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, and we have minutes from the special meeting held at 11:30 a.m. and the regular meeting held at 2 p.m. on September 25th, 2023. Move to adopt by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments or changes to the minutes? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, thank you. We'll move on to delegations, and we have just one today, and that is introduction of our new Director of Infrastructure Services. Mike.
Thank you, and through the chair, I'd like to welcome Director McDonald here. I know that he wants to say a few words, so I'll let him introduce himself.
People never want to say a few words, so we appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to say hello, introduce myself, Jim McDonald. I'm very excited to be here. It's a really exciting time to be joining the City of Port Alberni. I think there's a lot of good things about to happen, and I'm really happy to be able to contribute and to help guide that. So any questions from anyone on Council?
Awesome. Thank you, Jim, and welcome. We're excited to have you and definitely excited to have this position filled. It's critically important for us, as I'm sure you know, and yeah, just looking forward to having you in this role. Councillor Solda.
And welcome. And just a quick question. Where are you from? Have you moved to Port Alberni? You know, that whole scenario.
For sure. My partner and I moved here from Banff, Alberta. We've been here a total of just over 2 weeks and have really had a good opportunity to enjoy the outdoors. And thankfully the rain hasn't kicked in for the winter season yet, so we were able to have a beautiful Thanksgiving weekend, and very excited to be here on Vancouver Island. So,
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you so much on behalf of Council. Welcome, and look forward to seeing you more here.
great. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll move on to staff reports. Item number 1 is accounts. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated October 10th, 2023 be received and checks numbered 153597 to 153683 and inclusive in payment of accounts totaling $1,099,300.19 be approved.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried. None opposed. Thank you. On to bylaws, and we have just one item today as well, and this is final adoption. We do have our director here if anybody has any questions, but this is final adoption of the zoning bylaw number 5074, and this is our bylaw modernization. Any questions before we read this? Okay. Councillor Mealy, would you like to read?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the zoning bylaw number 5074-2023 be now finally adopted, signed by the mayor and corporate officer, and numbered 5074.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Correspondence for action. We have one item as well from the Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage Society, the 2-spot locomotive display. Questions, or would staff like to introduce this? I'll go to Mike for just a brief introduction.
Through the chair, I don't have a lot to add, but I know that the 2-spot train is a historic item here in Port Alberni, and that there is some interest in displaying it in the community, making a placemaking statement for the community and the history here. So there's a request here for council to look at a general area, and staff has put in a possible recommendation for staff. However, council may want to direct it somewhere else, so I'll leave it up to council's discussion.
Thank you. I think this is an exciting initiative to talk about. I know it was mentioned earlier from Councillor Mealy that we likely want to refer this to Heritage Commission to get their take on it before we do decide what to do. I think there's a recommendation here as well to ask staff for a report. I think that we could amend the recommendation, Councillor Mealy, if you wanted to read it and just include the Heritage Commission in there. I think that's a thoughtful idea and make sure that we get proper input. So if you want to read that, and then we'll see if there's any other comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I move that council direct staff to prepare a report outlining alternate locations within the proximity of the train station, and as well to send this to the Heritage Commission for comment.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patola. Any other comments? No. Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And proclamations, we have one proclamation today, an email dated September 26, 2023, requesting the month of October be proclaimed as Foster Family Month in Port Alberni. Would somebody like to move that? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move the council proclaim the month of October as Foster Family Month in Port Alberni.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And correspondence for information, I'll go to our corporate officer for a summary.
Thank you. Through the mayor, first piece of correspondence is a letter from the Youth Parliament of British Columbia Alumni Society with an application form looking for members to sit on youth parliament. Next, we have a letter from the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board with the 2024 budget. A piece of correspondence from Kathy Peters, the Anti-Human Trafficking Initiative at UBCM Trade Show Follow-Up, as well as a letter from B'nai B'rith Canada regarding the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance Plenary Summary, as well a letter and summary from the Minister of Housing regarding the point-in-time homeless count final results, and the Advisory Planning Commission minutes from the meeting of August 17th, 2023.
Thank you very much. Are there items councillors would like to speak to or ask questions about? Councillor Mealy and then Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, I was just hoping we could, if I could, make a motion to send the correspondence from the Youth Parliament of British Columbia to North Island College and to Alberni District Secondary School. If I have a seconder, I'll talk on it.
I'll second if we can add 8th Avenue Learning Center as well.
8th Avenue, absolutely, Madam Mayor. 8th Avenue. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's something that I was part of back when I was young, very young, and it was a big part of why I became a city councillor at the age of 21. So just want to make sure that the local youth have an opportunity to go and experience sitting in the legislature and being part of that.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. So we've got a motion moved and seconded. Not seeing any additional comments on the motion. All in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Councillor Haggard and then Councillor Solda.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Mealy. I was going to make the same suggestion. Great minds think alike. I do have a question for Councillor Patola. I don't know if you're prepared to answer it today or not, but maybe you could find out for us around the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board. When I was the representative, they were going to do some renovations to our library, and they got postponed due to the rising cost of construction. However, the mayor and I did meet with the executive director, and he assured us that it was still on their radar. Have you heard anything in the last year since you've been on the board about the renovations are still on their radar or what's happening?
I'm pleased to answer that question. That, in fact, you are correct. It's on the radar. Now, I don't think that's a particularly helpful answer. And we did get bumped off our position at the top of the list. We were next in line. That was primarily due to available funds and the costing for our library, as well as the necessity required by other libraries. So currently, the VIRL is investing funds into a rebuild of the Haida Gwaii Library, which I don't have any of the information with me, but it basically was a one-room rotting log structure that was completely inappropriate for anything. So certainly a benefit to that community that was supported by all of VIRL. And they have devised a newer system for prioritizing library rebuilds, but without any information in front of me, I don't really have an ability to explain that any further.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I was going to pull that one out and speak to it as well, because I was the rep on the library board for 4 years as well, or 6 years, and we've been at or near the top of that list for at least a decade, and we've seen no real, some minimal improvements, but no significant improvements. Of course, the work was being costed and everything, and significant plans underway, and then COVID kind of threw a wrench in some of Viral's plans. So we did have a meeting last year, and it might be worth myself and you setting up another meeting just to really follow up a bit more intentionally on what their plans are, and make sure that we're not being forgotten. I know we're on the list. I know we'll stay on the list. But I know as well that Viral has spent significantly on library rebuilds over the last decade, and on library renovations, while we kind of sat back and there was a lot of waiting for when will our turn be. And now we're at our turn, and they're changing their model. So for people who don't know how Viral works as a function, we all pay into it. And so we've paid significantly for improvements in other communities to their libraries that have been absolutely needed. But now, I think, in my opinion, I think there's been a lot of overspending on some of those projects. They are elaborate and beautiful, and those communities are very lucky to have them. But we have funded those projects, and now there's a pulling back of funding because library costs have gotten so high. There's a pulling back of that funding model, and I think we want to make sure that we don't end up missing out on our portion of what we've already paid into. So I'd love to follow up. I also was curious, Councillor Patola, if you know, because I note that they put our percent or our cost in here, which is $1,072,702 for 2024. That is just the city of Port Alberni's cost, for anyone who's not aware, for library. The regional district, Alberni Valley areas, so Beaver Creek, Cherry Creek, Sprout Lake, Beaufort, actually pay additional to that, and their portion is approximately $350,000 as well. So the Alberni Valley as a whole, Ucluelet, Tofino being separate from that, they pay additionally. We pay about $1.4 million a year in order to have a library. So it is a very significant cost. It is a critical system and function and service in our community, but it is a massive cost. And that is because of the model of everybody contributing for all of the new builds that have happened in other communities. We have not gotten our fair share of that. So I know that over the years or the prior years when I just got on the board, some of the increases to the library were in the 10 to 12% range per year. And we would never allow our budget to be increased that much. And they had several years of those budget increases that we ended up paying, of course. So I just think we need to make sure we're staying on top of that, so that while all of the improvements that have been made, and I'm sure the Haida Gwaii library needs to be redone, we've paid into this system for a long time, and we need to make sure we get our benefit from it. But I wasn't sure if we had a percentage increase. I know that Viral's increase overall is 3.4% for 2023, but ours likely works out different just because of the Library Act and how the funding formula works. So not sure if you have that or not, Councillor Patola, no problem if you don't today, but something for us to follow up on.
I do not have the actual percentage today of the Port Alberni share, but I can tell you, and you might all be surprised, that at every VIRL meeting, my presence is noted. So I will certainly bring those concerns forward as I have in the past. The discussion about expansion or rebuilding was kind of a back burner discussion behind the budget, and the budget has now been approved for the next year. So the path is cleared for discussions to return to things that are nearer to our heart.
Thank you. We chose you for that board for a reason, so. Okay, other items? Sorry, Councillor Mealy.
If I may, Madam Mayor. So, and I'm also a previous VIRL board member on behalf of council. We've all done our time, absolutely. The only thing I'll suggest is when you do meet is just to keep in mind, it may be a bit of a crystal ball, but I mean, if we do agree on getting a new pool, things are going to change, and I'd hate for us to accept a project, spend it, make all these additions to the library, and then that has to change in a couple of years. So I just ask that, keep that in the back of your mind.
Absolutely. Thank you. Other comments or items? Councillor Solda.
Yeah, and just touch the library. The library has, since I've been on council, it's been a contentious item because of the escalating costs. So I just want to bring up the Ministry of Housing, the homeless count, Madam Mayor. You and other councillors and myself have gone and talked to ministers during the UBCM, and maybe we could take this particular letter and add it to our committee of the whole meeting when we talk about the UBCM, because I believe that it's totally important to talk about the homeless count, and it's not just in our community, it's all over everybody's community, and that's really important.
Absolutely, and several of the meetings that we did have at UBCM touched on this. We didn't have the updated point in time numbers, but I think we knew what to expect, so that information was brought forward to ministers. Councillor Hager, did you have your hand up? Councillor Dame.
Thank you. Yeah, I was actually just going to bring up the same thing, and I would just like to take this opportunity to suggest to any members of the public watching to find this document in the agenda and look it over, because there's a lot of really important eye-opening information here. The demographics that homelessness is affecting, the reasons for individuals finding themselves in that situation, it very much contradicts a lot of what the common perception out there is, and I think it's something that everybody should see to just understand what they're looking at. So that would be great if this would come to a committee of the whole, so that we could have a more in-depth look at it at some point. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay. With that, would somebody like to move receipt of our correspondence for information items A through F?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Patola, seconded by Councillor Mealy. All in favor? Carried, none opposed. And we have no report from in camera today, so we'll move on to council reports. Any items councillors would like to highlight or speak to? Okay. Then we will move on to new business. Item number 1, First Nations representative at council meetings. Notice of motion provided on September 25th, 2023.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I may speak to this, I provided the notice of motion at the last meeting. It just seems to me that there are some specific requirements about when other individuals, rather than just the elected representatives, are allowed to sit at council meetings, and depending also on the nature of the local government. So, for example, the ACRD is under different rules. And when I sit on occasion at the ACRD, I see the impact that the Malnuth Nations have and how valuable that is. And when I sit at other meetings that we have that are not council meetings, and we have representatives from Seychet and Uplichtsith there, I again see how valuable their input is. And so I've made this motion so that council can do the legal research and also the cultural research to see what options are available, so that we hopefully, based on that report, can take the next step of issuing an invitation, but done so in the appropriate manner.
Thank you. Do you want to read your motion, and then because it is, I assume it's intended to be a full motion today.
Yes. So, Madam Mayor, I move that council direct staff to prepare a report outlining options to include a representative from both Seychet and Uplichtsith First Nation to attend public council meetings for the purpose of providing input to council.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Patola, seconded by Councillor Solda. Comments? Councillor Solda.
So my comment would be, we have a school district liaison that comes in attendance sometimes. And would it be similar to that? Is that what you are proposing?
Councillor Patola.
I can't say that I can say definitely it would be similar, but I can't say in what ways, simply because of the different nature of the organizations.
Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know if council is aware, but the regional district is working on an inclusive governance model for their board. Right now, members of First Nations that are only treaty nations can sit on their board. They're trying to work to include also non-treaty nations, so to not only be representative, but they'll have a real voice at the table along with the vote. So I think council would be better served in order to support that initiative where somebody is not just sitting in the audience, that they can sit at a table and have real input with the real voice and real representation. So I think we might be better served to support that initiative. Thank you.
Thanks. I was going to bring up the inclusive governance work that the regional district is doing as well. I think likely we could do or explore both, support the work of the regional district and do a bit of groundwork to see if this is something, first, that is possible, obviously, how and what that would look like within the community charter. Additionally, I think the first question before we even look at that is there an interest from Seshotna and Hupachesit in participating in some way? I've had this conversation with both chiefs in the past, and at times there's not been an interest for a variety of reasons. Firstly, capacity. Counselors from Seshotna and Hupachesit, not to say it would need to be a counselor, it could be an appointed person, tend to be overstretched in the amount of tasks that they're asked to take on. And also the feedback that I've heard is if we don't have a vote, then it doesn't feel meaningful to be there. That could be completely different today than it was in the past. So I think before we look at what it could look like, we should start by asking the question of, is there an interest in participating? And if there was an interest, what would that look like for you? And then we can go and research. So I think I would support this. I think it's a great initiative to start the process and coming from the right place of wanting to be an inclusive government. I just think maybe an amendment to say that council directs staff to engage with Seshotna and Hupachesit to determine if there's a desire to move forward and then subsequently prepare a report outlining options and what that would look like. I think that could be a friendly amendment, if that was okay with Councillor Patola, just to make sure we're starting first with asking, rather than starting with the work of what we think it will look like, and then maybe we could even determine what it could look like together and then bring it back to see. Councillor Patola.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and those are all excellent comments, both from Councillor Haggard and from yourself, Madam Mayor, through the chair. The motion is worded the way it is because it is to be a general report. So it doesn't specify a report that would have First Nations representatives sit in the body of the council chambers. The report would provide a recommendation or some research onto where it's most appropriate. I certainly think that I would give up my seat and sit myself in the body while someone occupied my seat. But before I make outlandish actions in this body of council chambers, which I would be want to do, I think a report would be useful. And also the purpose of the report is for the issuing of an invitation. And certainly, so in preparing the report outlining the options, one of the sources that I would expect staff would go to would be those First Nations. So I don't think that the amendment is required, but I also don't find that it's offensive because it's already embodied within at least the intent of the wording to be as general as possible and include anywhere an individual might sit, anywhere that an individual might speak, and any individual should they wish to be here.
Thank you. And I just kind of go back to 2017 when the city started formally talking about reconciliation, and our council, under a different mayor, but our council at the time, very well-intentioned, said, we have a solution. Let's create a reconciliation committee. We'll lead it. We'll use our terms of reference. We'll do it just like a city committee. We thought, great, this is good work. Let's invite Seshotna and Hupachesit to be a part of it. Seshotna and Hupachesit came to our first meeting and said, this is not how you reconcile by deciding like that we're going to use your processes and your systems to, you know, to bring a committee together and decide what that looks like. So since then, and that was 2017, the city has really taken an intentional approach to ask first before we get into our processes. So I understand that your motion includes that and is just maybe some background work. For me personally, I think in keeping with that way of working together, because it has, it's been recognized and vocalized that it's worked. I think we just take it a half step back, ask first, and then continue with the report. But I totally support this initiative, and I think, yeah, especially given some of the specifics on how we have worked together in ways that we haven't before with Sashot and Hupachesed, I think this is very in line and hopefully will be welcomed. Councillor Solda.
I actually like the amendment that would proposed. The same reason, we're putting the cart before the horse, and we need to, or the horse before the cart, and we need to ask. And that's, I've heard that before. You don't ask us, you just do it, and then you present it to us, ask us. And I've heard that from them. So if they're the same, I have no problem with the amendment.
I will make the amendment then. I will move that we amend the motion just to add in basically that council directs staff to engage with Sashot and Hupachesed to determine if there's a willingness and then jointly prepare a report outlining options and so on as written by Councillor Patola. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Solda. Okay. Any other comments on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll vote on the amendment because I made it formally. On the motion, or on the amendment, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And any additional comments on the main motion? Okay. Then on the motion as amended, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And thanks, Councillor Patola, for bringing that forward. Moving on to item number 2, we have BC's Housing Central Conference authorization for council registration. And this is November 20th to 22nd. Are there councillors who are available and would like to attend? Councillor Patola?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When this invitation came out, I initially suggested that I would be willing to attend, and I would still be willing to attend, but I note that they've graciously offered 2 placements for free to the City Council, and I have attended before, and it is a very valuable information experience to understand more about types of housing that are available, what not-for-profit housing is, what all the different levels are. So I would suggest that any individual from council who is available to go and hasn't and doesn't have a background in housing already should go. And should there be another spot, I would gladly take it because I find it very valuable, but I really recommend it to other councillors to attend.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
I remember Dustin, or Councillor Dame, was talking about wanting to go. Did you check that out?
Thank you, through the chair. I'm certainly interested. I need to give a bit more thought before I commit to how that fits with my schedule, but I appreciate it. So if somebody else wants to jump in and take it now, I totally understand because I'm not ready to commit at this moment. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, could we tentatively put Councillor Dame down, and if he doesn't go, then I will take his place? How's that work?
Absolutely. Yeah, that works for me. And are there any other councillors who are available? Okay. So why don't we move then approval of Councillor Dame with the alternate being Councillor Solda and Councillor Patola, if that works. Okay. That's moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Solda. Councillor Patola, go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My only comment would be, again, we've said it already, but make a note that I'm happy to have another person take my place.
Okay. So I think we've given approval to 3 people, of which we'll have 2 people go, and we can work that out amongst ourselves. Okay, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Item number 3, we have a report dated September 27th, 2023 from the Director of Human Resources requesting council rescind various policies and approve an overreaching operational health and safety policy. Welcome.
Okay, Mayor and Council, as you will see from the reports before you, we've been reviewing the policies that the city has related to occupational health and safety as well as human resources. As part of this review, we have looked at the nature of the policies to determine where appropriate approval of these should be, given the authorities provided under the community charter and council bylaw, as well as good governance practices. So the first report outlines that currently the City of Port Alberni has a variety of occupational health and safety policies, a handful of which have been previously approved by council, and these are listed in the report there. The city also has a large number of other safety policies, safety programs, safety procedures that have never been approved by council. And all of the safety policies, programs, procedures are very administrative in nature and in line with WorkSafe BC and other legislative requirements. So the report before you recommends that council rescind the occupational health and safety policies that are currently approved by council, and that the CAO be authorized to approve these policies moving forward, and also that council approve a new overarching council occupational health and safety policy that would provide direction for the revision of current policies as well as the development of future policies as required from time to time. And if there are any questions on this report, I'll be pleased to answer them.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It says that these policies should be removed and authority given to our CAO. Would these duties not fall under the HR department? Or would you work in combination together for approval?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, through the mayor. I would be responsible in concert with my health and safety advisor, as well as our joint occupational health and safety committees as appropriate for the development of those policies or procedures, and but have approval of those fall with the CAO.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, would somebody like to move the first part of this motion, motion A? And I think we could just say as written, as there's quite a lot of content here and we've all had a chance to read it. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council rescind current council approval occupation health and safety policies as follows, and then I won't read the rest, as written in the agenda.
Thank you very much. Moved by Councillor Patola, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any additional comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried. And the next part, item B.
That council approve council occupational health and safety policy number 5005-1.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Patola, seconded by Councillor Solda. Seeing no additional comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And item 4. We'll go back to you, Krista.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So as stated, we've been reviewing the human resource policies that the city has as well. And there are many of these that need to be updated, as you may have seen, and there are some that are simply not necessary to be policies. Currently, all of the human resource policies for the city are approved by council. So the report before you recommends that council rescind a number of these human resource policies, those that are administrative in nature, and that they be approved by the CAO moving forward in accordance again with the authorities under the community charter and bylaws. These policies are outlined in the report, a very long list of them. And there are also a number of human resource policies that are recommended that would remain under the authorization of council. And again, these are outlined in the report as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Krista. So just because we're on YouTube and we're out there, so I just want to make sure that everybody knows. So these aren't programs that are going away. They're just merely moving from being under council's umbrella to under staff's umbrella, correct? Am I getting that right?
That is correct. However, there are a number of policies that we currently have that are just not required. They're either what is contained within them are legislative requirements, or things that are covered under our collective agreement or somewhere else. So there are some that will, they're just not necessary, and there are a number that will need to be updated, but yes, will still be policies of the city.
So I just want to pick one out if that's okay. So the EFAP, Employee Family Assistance Program, that won't be changed. That still will be a program that our municipal staff can still use and employees.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other comments? Councillor Mealy, would you like to read the motion?
Yes, I can, Madam Mayor. Every word? Okay, no, that's all right. I move that the council rescind current council-approved administrative human resource policies as follows to permit future policy approval by the chief administrative officer. And again, it is a list. It's on our agenda, so everybody can see that.
Thank you. And, sorry, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Dame. And I just want to clarify, with our new system where we are in a hybrid meeting, we can see on the screen right now, agenda. Are people at home able to see that information as well? Yes, okay. So that's great. And I think that that's a really good benefit of utilizing this new system, because in the past it's been, if someone's talking, then you can't see the agenda. So nice to be able to have that information. Councillor Mealy.
Also, just note if this will be on YouTube later, so if anybody wants to go back and read that, they can stop it at the time, pause it, write it out, or print it out if they need to. So it's all there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, seeing no additional comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Krista. And we'll move on to our two additional items. So the first one is key to key, and just some questions from Councillor Solda.
Yes, Madam Mayor, the questions I was asked is about, first of all, why is it's taking so long to dig what we're digging right now? And the second one is, some people have asked questions regarding why do we have to go 6 feet down to put a cement sidewalk down?
Great questions. Mike.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Through the chair, depending on the area of the trail, you might have noticed out on the Harbor Key, it was only taken down about 6 inches, and the gravels were provided, it was compacted and provided a paved surface. On the other areas, we have to do some retaining to make sure that the train can still operate. So we have to build a retaining wall, which then requires a footing. There are also going to be some lamp standards on this to provide lighting for the trail, which also have to be dug to a different depth. So in areas where we don't have to dig down deep, we won't. But if there's the improper material to build a multimodal path, similar to road construction, you have to remove material that isn't suitable to build on, so you can build the trail. But also you have to build to a depth that, if you're building a retaining wall, that it meets engineering specifications.
Super, thank you very much for clarifying that.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions that members of the public have heard around this? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to item number 6, which is just a question and update from around the sunken trawler.
Yeah, thanks. Through the chair, this was a question that was brought up by Councillor Douglas, who was unable to be here today. So on his behalf, we're just looking for an update from CAO on the sunken trawler situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dame. Mike?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I know that there's been a lot of questions and comments out in the community about this. Western Canadian Marine Response Corporation, in conjunction with the Port Authority, have been looking after the trawler. As of today, there has been, the last update was on Friday, but they continue to monitor daily. There has been no change in any of the spill or pollution to the area, and they're looking for the resources to actually lift it out of the area, where their first attempt to lift it didn't work. So they are actively monitoring the situation and assure the public that they are doing everything to get this situation rectified as soon as possible.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to question period. And this is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council on decisions or recommendations made during the course of the meeting. We'll allow a maximum of 3 questions per speaker. Would anybody like to come forward? Mr. Anderson.
Most of this is clarification. Number 1 is on this First Nations, and I know it's up for discussion and which way it goes. There's a lot of work to be determined on there. As far as Councillor Patola had mentioned, sitting on council meetings versus the motion, which refers to attending. Everyone has an opportunity to attend and express their feelings, and I'm not talking against working with something like this, but we vote for certain, all 7 people on this committee and just allow them to sit on the committee, even if it's with voice and no vote. I have something that doesn't sit right with me there. But I'm also interested in ensuring that they have an opportunity to speak their minds and bring their issues forward. Having said that, as I said, it mentions that they to attend public council meetings for the purpose of providing input to council. What kind of input were you actually thinking about? I can think of a few myself, but just in your opinion.
Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Anderson. On things we don't know anything about is the kind of input I would expect. And I don't think that really is any different in this situation, speaking with the knowledge and expertise that a local First Nation would have, isn't all that much different from the knowledge and expertise that we would seek if we were building a bridge. We would talk to somebody that knows about building bridges. So since the business of the city generally concerns the lands of the First Nations, there is probably, I'm assuming, but just guessing, some interest or some point of view that the local experts might have that we may not. And so the purpose of this is not to define, again, where individuals sit. The wording of a motion is the wording of a motion, and it was rewritten 3 times before it got to be rewritten the 4th time. So the point is to be proactive, be forward-thinking, look to the obligations that are set out in the TRC Commission's recommendations, and not be stuck on a simple word, but be focused on engagement with the individuals that are and nations that are in our community.
And that's it, the answer I would expect. And yes, it's how to do this without with staying within the laws and the rules of how they participate within council or with council. That's a concern that I have and look forward to seeing how that's going to work. It also brings to my attention, yes, so they can bring forward concerns that we may not be aware of. And I can't help but refer back to the seniors committee that was turned down, or we weren't accepted as reinstating that. And I don't want to get into that discussion, but that's exactly what we wanted to do with reinstating the seniors committee. And they're both bodies within the general public that have a common interest, not a common interest, but an interest that reflects totally on their own situation. It's as far as I'm going to go with it at the moment. But it is relevant in the sense that all groups need to be represented and have a voice in a manner that addresses their concerns. Second one, on our Occupational Health and Safety Committee, who comprises that committee? And is there, if so, how many of the staff are included in that committee? I mean, the general staff, average worker.
Thank you. Mike, do you have that information?
Through the chair, so we follow WorkSafe BC and legislation on that. Every workplace over a certain number of employees is mandated to have a health and safety committee. So we follow the legislation that may be updated and changed time to time.
Okay. So is there staff members that are not directors or department heads that are part of that committee, sitting committee?
Through the chair, I could look up the number in the Act that could respond to that. But yes, there is a representative from the workplace as well as from management on the committee. And it's legislative, so we follow the legislation on that.
Okay, so yes, thank you. The last one I have there that I have a concern about, not that that always matters, But nevertheless, seems to be a big shift in taking what was done previously by city council and passing it on to the CEO. And I'm referring to Article 4 and Article 3 of the new business, occupational health and safety issues, and all the bylaws are now to be decided. I understand from Councillor Mealy or someone had mentioned that there is some input provided by council. But I have a problem with that, and no reflection on our CEO by any means. But to me, that's why we elect our city council, to oversee this whole building, to oversee what happens with our CEOs, our directors. And so I have quite a problem with all this being shuffled off, although I understand there's a few things that the city is involved in on this list, but I don't know which ones they are, that the city aren't the overseers of what the decisions that are made even by our CEO.
Mr. Anderson, I just wanted to note, because I heard you say that bylaws decided by staff, and bylaws are not decided by staff. Bylaws are a function of council. I think what you might be, so these are our policies, and what we're attempting to do here is match up the work with who's responsible for it. So the oversight, council as a body is, although I think people would love to think that we are responsible for operation of every city facility, we are responsible for the CAO, oversight of strategic direction, oversight of other items, but trying to ensure that where there's something that is operational in nature, it is overseen by the people who are responsible for operations, which are the CAO and directors.
Yes, and my mistake, I didn't mean bylaws. The motion talks about policies. I think you knew that, though. I'm still not convinced that you've answered my question. All these items down here are ultimately going to be decided on by our CEO, right or wrong.
Yeah, Mike, if you want to comment more on the policy side of things and the change that's been made.
Yeah, forget I mentioned bylaws. That was my mistake.
Yeah, through the chair. So on policies, council directs us through overarching policies, master plans, bylaws, etc. And then they have control of it through the budget. If there is something that is seen that council doesn't like, they can bring it up at a council meeting and direct administration to rectify a situation. But as per legislation, the CAO position is the only staff position that reports into council. And then legislation also then dictates that the CAO is responsible for the operation day-to-day of a municipality. So at the end of the day, council does set the policy, and if I'm not following it, then they take it up with myself.
Well, that sort of answers my question. So you can't just make a policy on these items listed in both of the sections there without going to council and saying, this is what I'm going to do. Any problems?
Yeah, so...
Or I'm hearing that you don't have to. You're talking about going to the budgets that day-to-day running in the office doesn't go back to the budget.
So through the chair, yeah, it does come back to council. It would be very career limiting for a CAO to make big changes within a organization without consulting with council. On all these policies, it's more or less if legislation changes on a lot of these policies, then we can make that change administratively and then update council with that. But if there was a major change that administration was going to make, we would have the discussion with council before making that.
Right, and these aren't, excuse me, these aren't all what you would call major changes. I'm glad to see that they're being reviewed. That should have happened a long time ago. A lot of our policies. So I'm understanding from what you just said that you, before making a change, will discuss with council as to what that change is going to be.
Through the chair, so unless it's dictated by legislation or council's given direction through a policy of council or a bylaw of council, some of those directions, then I would make the changes to fulfill what council has directed us to do. But if it's something outside of that and administration is making a change, then you are correct. I would be highlighting it with council and seeking direction.
But you said that on both occasions, even by making a change, you'd consult with council or say, this is what I'm doing. That's the only thing I'm interested in. It was a dialogue between A and B as the administrators of this whole building.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who would like to ask questions today? Okay, seeing none, would somebody like to move adjournment? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. On the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.